Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we talk about issues affecting veterans after they get out of the military. Before we get started, I'd like to ask a favor. If you haven't done so already, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. If you've already done that, thank you. These ratings help the show get discovered so it can reach a wider audience. And while you're there, click the subscribe button so that you get notified of new episodes as soon as they come out. If you don't use Apple Podcasts, you can visit driveonpodcast.com/subscribe to find other ways of subscribing, including our email list. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now, let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, today my guest is Dennis Schroeder. Dennis is an Army veteran and founder of the Price of Freedom Foundation, which is a nonprofit whose goal is to tell the stories of those who have paid the ultimate price for our freedom. And this is a cause as a Gold Star brother, someone who's lost, I've lost my brother overseas in serving our country. But this is a cause that is near and dear to my heart. And so I'm excited to have Dennis on the show today to talk about his foundation and, the importance of sharing the stories of some of our fallen soldiers. So welcome to the show, Dennis. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, thank you very much, Scott. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. My own journey started basically at my birth. I was born into a Navy family. My father was an enlisted man, machinist mate in the Navy, and I was born at the Oakland Naval Hospital, the Oak Knoll Hospital, which is no longer. But I spent my childhood years on Navy bases and at my mother's family's place in southeastern Montana when my father would be out at sea. So I moved around a lot. My father retired when I entered high school, and I had visions of joining the Navy myself after high school, but I had defective color vision, I discovered. And so the Navy said I could be a Marine. And that really wasn't what I had in mind at that time. I do have a great deal of love and respect for my Marine friends and colleagues, but that wasn't the path I wanted to go. So I was fortunate that the Army offered me an ROTC scholarship to college, and I began what turned out to be a total of 24 years in the Army as a Medical Service Corps officer. Served in the 24th Infantry Division, the 9th Infantry Division, spent some time as a advisor to Reserve and National Guard medical units, spent some time recruiting doctors for the Army, for the Surgeon General when they had that mission themselves, was executive officer for a reserve hospital at Backfield Madigan Army Medical Center, was the Chief Army Reserves out at Triple Army Medical Center. Then I myself retired, and 11 years later, the Army asked me to come back for 2 years, which I did up at Fort Knox with the 11th Aviation Command, and it actually went by much faster than I ever imagined it would. But I have a son who served a term of enlistment in the Air Force and a daughter who served 8 years in the Army Reserve. So I have an entire family history of military service, and I'm one of those guys that if they would let old guys like me still serve, I'd still be in uniform today.
That's great. Yeah. And it's great to see your family history too with the military, with between the Navy and, the Army and Air Force. It seems like you got your family line has the branches pretty well covered.
Absolutely.
We'll have to get someone in the, maybe a grandchild someday in the Space Force.
There you go. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the Price of Freedom Foundation. When we spoke the other day, you told me a little bit of a funny story about how the foundation got started through a conversation that you had,
Yes.
And it kind of started as an idea and it turned into something more. So would you mind sharing that story?
I'd be happy to. Well, the idea really started many years ago when I was retired initially, and we were involved in in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I was seeing um, periodically that we would get some positive press uh, telling the stories of people who had served and who had given their life in service to our nation, and publications like GQ and Esquire magazines. And I was happy that I saw those kind of tributes being made. But at the same time, as I was reading those, I was asking myself, well, what about all of the others? There are many, many others that never got that attention. None of those families ever got that recognition for the sacrifice that their loved one had made. And this percolated for some time within me. And I had this idea that we've got the technology available today to collect and capture those stories far better than we ever have had in history. And though there's an expense associated with that we haven't, I mean, it's come down, but it's still not something that every person can do because they just can't afford it. But we, I believe that those who paid the ultimate price, uh, that they deserved to have their lives remembered and their stories told. And so I was kicking this idea around, and I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine who's a retired female Marine Corps drill sergeant. And because I was wanting to get some feedback, I was thinking there had to be somebody else that was already doing this, and I couldn't find anybody. And so I was trying to get some confirmation or get some ideas back, and was tossing this idea around with her over dinner. And she said, "Love the idea, Dennis. Now get off your ass and make it happen." And, and that's what I love about my Marine friends. It's like they don't pull punches. So
Right.
at the time, I was working for a college of nursing, and I was traveling 8, 9 states. I was 90% of the time I was on the road. I didn't have the time to put into it. I had no background in book publishing or video production. I just had this idea. Well, a few months after that conversation, the job that I had with the university went away. Now I have the time. And so I took her advice and started doing my research, and started to talk to people back before we were restricted from in-person networking events. I live near Nashville, and so I attended different things after hours, and spoke about this idea, and eventually found enough people that were willing to be on my board of directors that we could actually form the organization. So that organization, this organization was started officially in April of 2019, and we've slowly been able to put the pieces together so that we have a process that we can follow to actually begin this journey of telling the stories of people who've made that sacrifice for us.
Yeah, that's great, and I do like the straightforwardness of those people in the military, especially the Marines. It's don't just think about it. Don't just talk about it. Like, go out and do it. And
Right.
that's what you did. So it's good that you got that little bit of motivation. It seems like the idea was percolating in the back of your head, anyways. But it was something that kind of got you going there. So um,
Absolutely.
so what is it to you? What is it to you that makes it so important to tell these stories of the people who have paid this ultimate sacrifice, or who've made this sacrifice for our country?
Well, I think that what makes it important to me is that as a nation, we have been founded on certain principles of and certain values that we have. And all my life time, there's been a culture of respecting the people who serve, I mean, that's kind of ebbed and flowed over the decades that I've been alive, but
Hmm.
that has always resonated with me. And I've many times been to funerals, and it's like, okay, we memorialize that person during that ceremony and that service, but what do we leave for the families, and what do we have that we can share as a community, as a nation, after that's over? And there really isn't
Hmm.
a whole lot. And it just seemed to me that that these families deserve a little bit more than what they currently get. And I was especially concerned initially for the children. Um, the, uh, when you go to funerals, there's a lot of folks that, the kids that are, say, 10 years old or younger, uh, they'll most of the time they'll be polite, but they're not going to remember anything,
Right.
and they don't have a collection of pictures and stories that people have told during that service for them to look back on years later. And that's really been reflected in the case that we're starting to tell right now. The first story that we're telling is of uh, a machinist mate in the Navy who 2 years prior to his reaching his 20-year service mark and being able to retire was lost at sea off the USS Kitty Hawk between Japan and Korea. And the person that I spoke with about this was a Gold Star daughter. She was 10 years old at the time. She has a younger sister who was only 5 at the time. And um, the younger sister has no memories at all, really, of her father. And part of what we're going to be doing for them is collecting stories from people that they don't have contact with, and being able to piece together elements of their father's life that, as a child they really didn't know, and but now as
Right.
adults that they are very much interested in knowing. Uh, and so this is something that I think is going to be extremely valuable to them. Um, I think there's also another purpose that we serve, and that is for those families um, that have lost somebody. That 6 months to a year after the service member has died, almost universally they have the sense that their loved one's been forgotten, that their sacrifice is no longer honored.
Right.
And so, if we can get these stories about the lives of their fallen loved ones, if we can tell them in a way that's truthful, that's honoring, that's focused on who this person was, what motivated them, what were the their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, the things that they accomplished, the things that they struggled with. Telling that 360-degree picture of this person to an audience that is uh, larger than that family can possibly reach themselves, and from the perspective of a third party, I am convinced that we will be directly addressing that specific issue for them.
Yeah, and to that last point, where the families kind of get that sense of their loved ones being forgotten, 6 months to a year after, they passed away. As a Gold Star brother, which I mentioned I was earlier, I remember the day that I returned back to the U.S. from Afghanistan. So my brother and I both were in Afghanistan at the same time, and when I got back, there were a line of news vans that lined our street outside of my parents' house, and they were just waiting for an interview. Somehow they knew I was coming home that day, and they were waiting for an interview. And my first thought was to tell them to just take a hike. I wanted nothing to do with talking to those people, and I, I kind of just felt like they were being vultures, and they were just in it to get this a quick story, a couple quick sound bites and stuff like that to run their story. But our casualty assistance representative said to us that those news people are going to run a story one way or the other, um, uh, with or without us there. And that story may include sound bites from random strangers in the grocery store parking lot saying things like, "Oh, this is a tragedy," or "It's so sad to lose someone so young," or whatever. Um, Nothing really of any substance, right?
Right.
But none of those people were going to tell the story of who my brother was, and that was on us. We knew him best, and if we want people to remember him, we have to tell that story. And so we did. We talked to every television, radio, and newspaper reporter who wanted to do an interview for the next few weeks. And the intensity of those interviews, the frequency of those interviews, I should say, died down over a few weeks later. But it picked up again around the 1 year anniversary of his death. But after that, there are hardly any reporters coming around anymore. So,
Right.
just like what you said, 6 months to a year later, actually, technically, shortly after the 1 year anniversary was when Osama bin Laden was killed, and so we had reporters coming to talk to us about that and how we
Sure.
felt, and they were looking for the sound bites of that, but but there were hardly any reporters after that came around, and it felt like after that people didn't seem to care anymore. I mean, obviously, family and friends cared, but it just seemed like as a society, people kind of started to forget about that stuff, and so having a record of who these people are, all these people who made the ultimate sacrifice, I think is a great thing to do. Especially for families, like you said, the young children. I think that's really really a great way to remember their family history.
Absolutely. And I don't know if your brother had children or not, but in the case of our service members who were single and didn't
Mhm.
have children, they most of them still had extended families, and
Right.
so we want to be able to place in the hands of these families something that is going to be a legacy piece that they can pass on to future generations, so that they
Yeah.
can say, well, my uncle, or whatever the relationship was,
Right.
this is who he or she was, and that you know they can they don't have to try to piece together when they're in their 20s and 30s or beyond these stories that are going to be fragmented.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to pull this together and to have a professional biography writer uh, tell that story in a single voice, that that's something that that's going to honor them, they're going to honor their family, and be there for the future.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah. And my brother was he was engaged at the time, but he wasn't married. He didn't have any kids. And my oldest son at the time he was about 9 months old. And
mhm,
so while yes, technically my brother was an uncle, my son doesn't really remember him because he was just so
right,
young. And then our two other children that were born afterwards, they never had the opportunity to meet him.
right,
And so I know like my mother has done a lot of work digging up information of our family history through like ancestry.com type of sites.
right,
And unfortunately, our most of our family came from Europe, and a lot of like the records, the birth records and marriage and death certificates and all that kind of stuff, all those family documents were destroyed during the wars
of course,
that took
yeah,
place, and so they never had an opportunity to be digitized. And obviously there's a lineage that goes back a long way. The oldest family members that we could dig up any information on were born in the late 1880s or
right,
1890s or somewhere around there. And if you think about it, it's not really all that long ago.
no,
That's probably only like my great grandparents' generation. So I think that the work that you're doing here is especially important because while a lot of our records are digitized, birth certificates and marriage and death certificates and all that stuff, they may only really tell those basic demographic
yeah,
kind of things. Um,
exactly. That gives you a skeleton. We want to be able to fill in the gaps and put flesh on those bones, so to speak,
yeah.
to be able to give you a picture of who that person was exactly.
Exactly. And our fallen service members, they're not here to tell their story. And it's
Exactly.
great to be able to capture that from, stories family members, from friends, from coworkers, neighbors, you name it, and anybody who really knew them, to fill in some of those gaps and put meat on the bones of that skeleton that you're talking about.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's great, and I think another benefit to having these stories is that they're available not just for the family members who maybe are grieving, or maybe who never met these people and are just interested in their own family history, but it's also good for the American public, to know who these people are.
I completely agree. I really do. I think that by being able to tell these stories, we're going to be able to um, put specifics to the picture that people who haven't served have of those who do serve. Because realistically, everybody who ever puts the uniform on knows beforehand that they could be asked to make that sacrifice themselves. You knew that. I knew
Mhm.
that. My son, my daughter, my father, we all knew that. And so the people who actually do have to make that sacrifice are really no different than you or I.
Mhm.
And so by being able to tell these stories and tell more than just a handful of them, we know that we can help to um, put aside some of the stereotypes that sometimes you and I may hear from people that that really never served and really don't know that
Right.
our service members, other than having a dedication to serve and a willingness to be selfless in that service, um, we are a reflection of American society at large. So, all races, both genders,
Mhm.
uh, all political persuasions, people from basically all walks of life, and that's really, uh, in a larger sense, the message that we want to eventually be able to communicate to the American public is that these are America's sons and daughters, your brothers and sisters who have served, and these are the ones that paid that ultimate price, and we want to honor them and keep their memories alive by being able to tell their stories. So, we definitely are going to be publishing the books, but
Mhm.
we also, in the process of collecting the information, we will be doing interviews with people that we can find that knew the fallen, and we will be filming those interviews and using that footage as the basis to create a series of documentary videos. The how that's going to look exactly, we're not there yet, but we eventually want to be able to get a series of 1 hour documentaries that we'd like to get into major distribution. But until that time, we'll use these in shorter clips that will still tell the story and put it into YouTube or some other uh, platform that can be accessed by a wider population.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's it's great for the accessibility to the wider public. Not necessarily just the family members, which I think is great too. But there are people who just have a genuine curiosity about the military and war, and especially if they didn't serve themselves, or didn't know anyone who served that they could talk to. They might just be unaware of the things that happen in the military service,
Well,
and want to find out
absolutely.
more.
I will say that in the 2+ years of networking that I've done here in the greater Nashville area, I haven't found a single person who that I spoke with that wasn't touched by this mission and wouldn't be interested in seeing these stories once we are able to produce them. So
Right.
I completely agree with you. The vast majority of people that I met never served themselves, but were really moved to honor those that have. So yes, I think that there's an audience out there for what we're going to be producing.
Yeah, and I know when my brother was killed, I wanted to make sure that his wake and his funeral were pretty much open to the public. Not that I wanted to make a spectacle of his death and things like that, but we did end up having thousands of people come to his wake and funeral, and I wanted this because he was like we were talking about, he was a real person who had a real family with his own hopes and dreams and aspirations. He was a Yankees fan, but other than that, he wasn't too flawed as a person. Um, but I wanted people to see the reality of war, especially if they didn't know anyone who served. And prior to his death, to me, this sort of thing was just something that happened to quote unquote other people,
Right.
and it really became real to me that other people could look just like the person that you look at in the mirror every morning. And I wanted to make sure that people knew what those other people looked like, and
Right.
that was us. That was our family
Right.
in that moment. So
I completely agree. That's
yeah,
exactly how I feel, and that's what our purpose is, to be able to reach people who who don't know, who haven't served, and we don't want to uh, have the emphasis to be on the death of the individual. We want the emphasis to be on the life that they lived.
yep,
Uh, while not ignoring the sacrifice. And our efforts are going to be as much as possible apolitical. We don't want to um, align ourselves with any specific kind of political movement because we are in a constitutional republic, and we've got various different political parties, and
mhm,
we definitely know that they those who are in uniform represent those parties too, and all who have served deserve honor, and those that pay the ultimate price deserve honor, and so we can't do that if we align with any one particular political position.
exactly. Yeah, and I know from my experience when I served that the people I served with, they represented all walks of life. We had everything from Democrats and Republicans. We had
Mhm.
all you know a wide mix of racial backgrounds, and we had occupations, police, because as a National Guard soldier we had civilian occupations as well. We had police officers, we had mechanics, we had accountants, and we had lawyers. We had a wide variety uh, of people from all walks of life. And like you're saying, the military is not made up of any one group of people, and
Right.
to just alienate the rest and focus on one group doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We all wear the same uniform, and we all have the same flag that we fight under. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
uh,
I mean we all bleed red.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So, I know when we spoke the other day, you mentioned that the foundation does have a few needs, and I want to give you some time here to let the listeners know what those needs are, and hopefully, if we have any generous listeners out there who can, help out with the foundation's needs, if they have the means, they can do that. But I'd love
Well,
to give you the opportunity to mention a few of those.
well, absolutely. Well, we are still new and still extremely small, so certainly financial support is critical to us at this time. If somebody can come up with a generous gift of $1,000 or more, that'd be wonderful. But that's really not what we're expecting. Our ask would be a small monthly gift, something that fits within your budget. If this is a cause that is dear to your heart, a cup of coffee a month, a $5 gift would really help us to be able to plan and program what we can do into the future. Um, in order for us to get cinema quality recordings of these interviews, we're going to need a technology package of cameras and recording equipment and lighting and stuff like that we can ship to the location of the person that we're interviewing. That's about $13,000. until then, we will use Zoom video. But let's face it, everybody that's been on Zoom knows that once we're outside of this pandemic situation, it's not going to be the best quality video, and it's not going to make for the most interesting video clips that we can put out there. So,
Right.
For the time being, we'll use the technology that we have and that we can afford. But we really do want to be able to produce a quality video that people are going to be interested in watching. We have needs for volunteers. We have needs for people to be researchers. So outside of the people that, in the case of you and your brother, you serving, you probably have a few more contacts than folks like the sisters I was talking about. But the families know a few people. We want to find as many other folks that knew them while they were in the service, prior to their service, when they're kids in school, etc. So we definitely are going to need some researchers to help us to locate those people and invite them to participate in telling the story. I have a desire to have some more interesting things on for our website, on our merchandise site. Right now, the only thing that's out there on any of the merchandise is our logo, which I'm happy with. But I have seen a lot of organizations out there on Facebook and Instagram that have some killer graphics that are very moving and military related. I would love to have some folks that have the ability to create those to work with us. We're going to need people that have musical talents. Eventually we're going to need to have a theme song. We're going to need to have people that are great with video editing and the like. So we still have a lot of room to grow. And as I tell folks who express an interest in us, if what I've said doesn't quite fit what you need, if you have a heart for what we're doing and you've got a talent that you've got, talk to me and suggest how you see us fit working together, and we'll most likely be able to utilize that skill.
Yeah, and I know from we ran or currently run a nonprofit foundation in memory of my brother, and there's a lot of work that goes into the various things that go into that, even from the financial side, the bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff. There are so many different needs that organizations like yours that they need. So if anyone is willing to volunteer and reach out and help out with the things that that this organization is doing, please reach out, and we will have links to all the contact information in the show notes and everything. So you can certainly find how you can help out through that as well.
Absolutely.
So, well, and speaking of contact information and things like that, as we wrap up here, where can people go to get in touch with you and find out more about the Price of Freedom Foundation and everything that you're doing?
Well, our website is www.priceoffreedomfoundation.org. You can send me email at info@priceoffreedomfoundation.org. That comes to me directly. Our phone number is 615-389-1867. Is the phone number for the foundation. We have pages on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Instagram. We have the most followers currently on Facebook with about 3,300, and we'd love to grow that much larger. We have far fewer followers on the other social media sites. So Would love it if folks are on those platforms to like, follow, and share all of those with their contacts as well. Because we know that the more people that are aware of us, the more people that'll be in a position to help one way or another, and the more stories that we can attract to us, because we really do need more stories to tell. We're starting our first. It'll probably take about a year to complete each story that we work with. We have the capacity at this point to probably work on 5 stories consecutively. As we get more to tell, I'll need more writers. I have one writer who's a volunteer currently, but I'm certain he's going to be swamped if I give him more than 5. So we're going to need a lot of help and a lot of folks, and the more folks that are aware of us, the better this is going to be all around.
Absolutely, and I'm glad to be able to raise awareness of what it is that you're doing, and where people can go to find out more about you and your organization, and volunteer their time or resources if they're able. So again, Dennis, it has been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I look forward to watching some of these videos and reading about some of these folks who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So thank you again.
Thank you, Scott. It was it was an honor to be here, and thank you for your service and what you're doing through your podcast. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com, or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Drive On Podcast.